you are your own boss. You are the CEO. You get to make the rules. Like no one is telling you that you have to do something a certain way. You get to create the work and the schedule and the habits and the plans that work for you. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Influencer Podcast. Today's episode is going to be a fun one. We're going to get down to just some really simple tactics today that I think is going to be in service of you. I actually have talked to a few of you recently about this topic, which gave me the idea to do an entire podcast episode on it. And it's going to be awesome. It is all about how I plan out my work week, but specifically how it's different than previous years. So I'm calling this the 2023 edition. Now, I have done previous podcast episodes where I have talked about my morning practice and kind of how I plan my days and my weeks, but you know, every season calls for kind of a new thing. And so I'm going to be walking you through how I plan out my work week with 2023 and the goals and the initiatives that I have in mind for that. And we're going to dive into just really simple ways that you can start blocking and building out your days and your weeks to be of best service and benefit to your goals and what it is that you are focusing on. So I am coming in hot today with something I think is really fun, simple, and exciting, but also something that can really start helping you think differently with how you map out your months and your weeks. And that is really how to plan your day. Now, as I mentioned before, I have had many iterations of what my work weeks look like. And the reason why is for a lot of things. I've been in various different seasons of my business. I've had various different offers and different things that I had to show up for. I'm also a work from home mom. And so I have to stay home and work and figure out how to navigate those two things at the same time while having a 2-year-old at home and having a 9-year-old that comes home after school. So there's lots of iterations and levels to how I've had to continuously refine and tweak how I show up in my business and how I continue to work on my business by planning out my work week. So I want to walk you through how I'm planning out my work week in 2023 and really some ways that it looks different than previous years. And that's where we'll start. So in previous years, depending on what I was working on or depending on what kind of commitments that I had, I would usually batch or block certain days for specific things, right? So I would have a day for podcasting. I would have a day for coaching calls. I would have a day for calls that went outside of that. I would have days for content creation and things like that work. I love that idea of kind of batching out things by days. That has always worked for me. But what I started to notice as I was doing that is that basically every single day, I was setting my work week up that I had to be somewhere for something, right? I had to be on a podcast recording call, or I had to be on a coaching call, or I had to be on different calls with team members, or I had to be, on catching up calls with people, whatever it was. And I started to notice how much of my week was actually being wasted by threading these calls out throughout the week. And so I made a commitment at the end of last year, at the end of 2022, to rejudge my schedule and to really start planning it out in a way that gave me more space, that really gave me more time day in and day out to allow myself to work on the things that I really wanted to work on, while at the same time, of course, honoring the commitments that I had. And now, again, this is really all about subtraction. And if you've been listening to my podcast for the last couple of months, you know that that's been a big topic for me this year. That's a big goal of mine this year, is really about refining, tweaking, and taking what already works and making it better by subtracting and taking away the things that do not work and that no longer serve me. And one of those things for me was how I was planning out my work weeks last year. It meant that every single day I had to get ready. I had to be, camera ready for the day. And it just wasn't working for me. And if you're anything like me, I mean, even right now, if you're watching a video of this on my podcast or whatnot, you see from the waist up, I look pretty put together, right? I've got my makeup on, I've got my hair done, I've got my jewelry, I've got my clothes. But beneath all of this, I'm literally wearing sweatpants. I have socks on. this is my jam. This is how I like to do my thing. And this is pretty much what I look like when I have to be camera ready. But I don't necessarily like to get, at least from the waist up, ready every single day. I want to have days that I can just kind of put my hair in a bun and focus on what needs to be done. So I decided at the beginning of this year that I was going to change the way that I was planning out my work weeks. And instead of having each day be a batched focus on some kind of commitment or some kind of task or some kind of focus, I instead kind of flipped the script. And I created days that were focused more on overarching ideas or goals. And so this is what it looks like now. And we're going to be starting with Monday. So starting on Monday, what Monday is for me now is a content creation day. So this means that any kind of work that I need to do around reels that I want to create, around email marketing content that I want to create, around just content posts that I want to do, if there's any kind of copy that I need to refine or update for any of our automations or anything that is content focused in my business, Monday is the day for that. Now, what this allows me to do is stay solely focused on content creation only. This means that I could be creating the content and producing it that day, or it could just mean that I'm getting it locked and loaded and ready to be produced a different day. Now, when I say produced, I mean usually me literally just sitting there on my iPhone talking head. It's not like I have a massive production of video content that I do, but I use Monday to plan, prep, and prepare for that. And most of the time, I'll actually create the content that day as well if I have enough time in my schedule to do it. What I love about starting Monday off this way is that it just allows me to be full on creative. I don't start the week with the overwhelm. I don't start the week with all these people needing something from me. I don't start the week with consuming a bunch of stuff. I literally just start my day with creating content. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even really check my Monday emails until later in the afternoon after I have created some content first. And I have been saying what I'm about to say since I started this podcast for years. I am a firm believer in always creating before you consume. Before you get on Instagram, before you start consuming podcasts or reading books or whatever it may be for the day, you want to make sure that you're creating first. This is kind of how you essentially pay yourself first when it comes to the content that you're creating, so you're not consuming more or before you create. So Monday is my content creation day. And what I love about that is it just allows me to focus on that and that only. Now we go to Tuesday, and this is where I made a really big change. So in the past, as I mentioned, I used to have certain days for certain calls, right? Like I would have Wednesday would be my podcast recording day. Tuesday would be my coaching call day. Thursday would be my team calls and any other calls that I may have day. But what that ended up doing is really kind of stressing my schedule out and overwhelming me because I ended up being on all these calls throughout the week. So now that the way that I do it is Tuesday is my call day, period, plain and simple, end of story. I do my coaching calls on Tuesday. I do my team calls on Tuesday. Any podcast interviews or podcast recordings that I need to do, like the one I'm doing now, it's happening on a Tuesday. Tuesday is the day that I'm really kind of more consuming a lot of things, right? I have to create all of this stuff, but actually get it out into the world. Tuesday is also the day that if I don't actually create the content that I planned and prepped on Monday, I will do that on Tuesday. So Tuesday is the day that I know I need to be camera ready. I need to be locked and loaded. I need to make sure that I get a good night's sleep the day before. I got to get up early, get my workout in, and get going because as a mom of littles, I don't have the luxury of having all day and all afternoon to work on my business. I really, honestly, have the prime hours of about 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. to really work on my business. Around 3:30, my son gets home from school, my daughter's up from her nap, and I have to be a mom until they go to bed. And so those are really my key hours pretty much every day of the week. 10 to 3 is when I'm going to be my best and going to be on. So with that said, I know that 10 to 3, I got to pack a lot in between those hours. So that means I have to be as organized and ready to go the night before, the week before, the day before for my Tuesday day, because it is a very important day. It requires a lot of energy. It requires me to show up as my full self, as my highest self. And what I love about this is that once Tuesday's done, I don't have any other calls for the rest of the week unless I want to have them. But it just allows me to have so much more freedom through the rest of the week. And I'm not chained to a desk, or I'm not chained to a phone, or I'm not chained to a Zoom link having to do a bunch of calls. So I love this for me. Now, for somebody else out there, you could think that maybe this is going to be too overwhelming for you, like the thought of you doing all these calls on one day. But again, the other thing that I do is I make sure to not overload myself. So it's not like I'm doing 5 coaching calls and 4 podcast episodes and a team call and all these other calls on Tuesday. I really only load my schedule up with about 3 to 4 total calls on a Tuesday. One of those has to be a coaching call because I have those, that's a commitment that I have every Tuesday. One of those has to be a team call because that's another commitment that I have every Tuesday. And then the other 2 can either be podcast episodes, or if I'm connecting with somebody, a colleague or something like that, they can fit into my schedule. And that's the other big takeaway that I want to share with you. I have a Calendly that is like locked and loaded and ready to go. I always require that me and my team, we send my Calendly out. And if people want to meet with me or have a call with me, they need to fit into my schedule as it is. Now, of course, I'm not going to be crazy and not be flexible if what I have available doesn't work for someone else and they need me to work with them. I'm happy to do that if and when it works. But 99% of the time, when I tell people, hey, I only do calls on Tuesdays, this is what I have available for the next month, they find a time that works. And if that means that it may take a week or 2 for us to talk, then that just means it may take a week or 2 for us to talk. If it's not a priority that we get on the phone immediately, we can wait a week or 2. And again, what that allows me to do is stay focused on what the main goals are, what the main priorities are, and allows me to not overload and overwork myself on a Tuesday. So I love Tuesdays being full of calls. Again, at most, I'm going to have 3 to 4. So it's not like it's an overloading, but then I get all the calls done for the rest of the week and I can focus on the other things, which then I go into Wednesdays. Now, Wednesdays used to be a big podcasting day for me. That is when I would do any podcasts, like if I had guests on my show, or I would do solo recordings, or I would go on other people's shows. Nowadays, I tend to leave Wednesdays open for research days only. So what I mean by that is that I have days when I do my own research, my own data mining, my own building in and on my business. And this was a big thing that I learned over the years of when I don't take the time out of my schedule to really look at the data, to really look at the numbers, to really look at, are we hitting our goals? Are we hitting the mark? How are things going? It just doesn't happen. Now, if you have a massive team, there may be somebody on your team that does this for you and then reports back to you. But I do have a team, but it's not that big. And so at the end of the day, this really does rely on me. And then, of course, my ops manager. So I use Wednesdays as those days to really research in and on the things that are driving our business. How is the messaging going? How is the copy going? How are our conversion rates? How are our automations and funnels working? Does anything need to be fine-tuned and tweaked? And if they do, then I take that information and again, I save it for that following Monday when I go back into my content creation, my content editing, my content refinement day. So that is really what Wednesdays looks like. And what happens here is Wednesdays ends up being kind of like a really open day for me. So this is also a day that if I feel open to it, I may go have lunch with a friend. Now, it's not very common that I do this. I'm actually trying to get better at it. I tend to be somewhat of a hermit, and it's like really hard for me to leave my house, especially during the work week. But I'm trying to get better at that. So these are days that I will open myself up to go meet a friend for lunch or coffee or something like that. I also allow myself to read on Wednesdays if there's any articles or podcast episodes that I want to listen to or books that I want to listen to or read. This is my day to also do that. And I think that that was also a huge breakthrough for me. I started to notice over the last couple of years how much time would be spent on me, again, consuming other people's content, listening to podcasts, listening to books, reading blog posts, listening to, a slew of things that were informative and valuable. It doesn't mean that it wasn't valuable. It wasn't a waste of my time, but I was spending so much time doing that throughout the week that there was no proper structure in place. So Wednesdays is kind of my day now to do that kind of stuff for myself. If I want to, listen to a podcast, if I want to research and learn, that is my day to do that. And then we get to Thursday. Thursday is a day that I kind of created a new thing that I'd never had before, and I'm testing it out for this year to kind of see how it flows and see if I like it. And so far, it's been good. I'm calling it my strategy and self-development day. So this is the day that I use to, of course, get what needs to be done first. Like I still have my clients inside Voxer that I have to connect with every day. I still have my emails that I have to answer. I still have my team. I still have my Slack. I still have these ongoing things that happen every day. But on Thursday, when I'm done with all of those things, I really try to root into what are some of the self-development things that I am interested in that maybe even just go outside of my business. What are some things, maybe there's programs that I want to take or things that I want to dive into that may not be necessarily directly related to my business, but they could be indirectly related to my business because they all root back to my own personal growth and my own personal transformation. And the more that I grow and the more that I transform, of course, the better that my business does. I try to use Thursday and those days of the month, every Thursday, for those strategy, self-development, and education and personal development days. Now, with that said, it's also kind of a seasonal thing. There'll be some times of the weeks or the months that I'm into that, and there'll be some times that it's like, hey, there's nothing that I really want to dive into and I just want to work. And if that's the case, then I'll open Thursday up for potentially more podcasting, more calls if necessary, and kind of leave that day open. And then that gets me to Friday. And Friday is kind of my personal do whatever I want day. And it has been that way, I want to say, since about 2018. I made a commitment to myself when my son was really little. I think he might have been, about 3 or 4 years old at the time, that I really wanted to have a day a week that I could dedicate to him. Now, of course, this was a different time and season of my life and my business. My business wasn't as big as it is today. I didn't have a team. I didn't have all of those things. But I made that commitment to myself that if I could try to be as organized as possible and get what was absolutely necessary done 4 days a week, I would have 1 day a week to devote to be with him. And because I made that a habit so many years ago, it kind of stuck. And as I continued to grow my business and grow my team and scale out, of course, there were still, more responsibilities and things like that I had to show up for. But I had habitually created this mindset that Fridays, no one could touch. Friday was a no-brainer personal day for Julie. And so what this allows me to do now is I've continued to have that over the years. Friday is a day that I just wake up and I choose what I want to do. Do I want to go see friends and have lunch? Do I want to work? Do I want to go run errands? Do I want to do my doctor's appointments on that day? Like, what is that going to be? And I usually fill up any kind of self-care or any kind of appointments that are personal or that are related to anything that I need to do outside of my business on Friday. Now, again, I am a mom of 2 little kids. This is no way perfect. It doesn't just, I wake up magically with rainbows and butterflies and have these perfect days of the week. But what this does, planning out my Monday through Friday this way, it gives me a baseline. It gives me a structure. It gives me a system to follow. And it also allows me to get really honest with myself and ask myself, Julie, what is essential here? Like when you really take all of the stuff away, what is absolutely essential for the growth and the health of you, your business, your family, your life. So we're not too far into the year yet, but so far I will have to say, I really like this type of plan. It has probably been my favorite out of all of the batching, scheduling, work week things that I have tried, because again, it's just allowing me to create a lot more space, and it's allowing me to subtract the things that are not essential. And with that space though, here is the trick. The goal with that space is, once you allow yourself that space, is to not just fill it up with a bunch of other stuff, because then you're not creating the space. The goal here is to really give yourself that space that's needed for the new ideas, the new insights, the new aha moments, the new clarity, the new creativity, and all of that beautiful stuff that we need to drive our business to the next level. That's where all of that comes in. It comes in the space. It's also allowed me to take walks when it's nice outside. And when I get outside in nature and I take walks, that's where all of my best ideas and inspiration come from. I think some of my best reels, my best performing reels lately have been me literally walking in the park, and I come up with an idea and I just put my phone up to my face and I start talking and I record video. And so I like when I allow my life and I allow my schedule to have room for those kinds of moments, for those kinds of spaces. And I think it's important to remember that if you're on this entrepreneurial journey, if you work from home, if you own your own business, if you're building your own brand, you are your own boss. You are the CEO. You get to make the rules. No one is telling you that you have to do something a certain way. You get to create the work and the schedule and the habits and the plans that work for you. So I hope this was helpful. Maybe it gets you some insights. Maybe you think I'm crazy. Who knows? Maybe it's all the above. But I will say that no matter what you do when it comes to planning out your work week, you've got to get really clear on figuring out a system and a plan that works for you. So I hope that this has been helpful. I hope it's given you some insights on how you can start to not only work smarter, but to think bigger about what's possible with how you structure and how you fill your day. And most importantly, how you don't fill your day. And with that, it's going to give you more opportunities to scale, to become more visible, and to bring all of that good clarity and the ideas in that you need. And until then, I will see you soon. If anything resonated with you today, make sure to just drop me a little note inside Instagram. You can screenshot today's episode. Let me know your thoughts there. You can also leave a review, which I so appreciate. If you're feeling flirty and fancy today, you can go ahead and leave a review in the podcast app, because that allows other people to know what to expect from this podcast journey with me. And if it's resonating with you, I'm sure it's going to resonate with somebody else. So I so appreciate when you leave your thoughts and your feedback and your reviews, either in the podcast app or in my DMs, or if you want to screenshot and share with your community. And until next time, have a beautiful rest of your week. Get to structuring, get to planning. You're worth it. And I'll talk to you soon.